Hey everybody, welcome back to Platinum Off-Road. In this video, we're going to talk to you about the install on the conversion of a one-piece axle shaft. This is a standard kit. There are multiple manufacturers making kits for the one-piece axle. This is just a one unit. The flange is molded in, machined in with this actual shaft. The factory on these old CJ AMC 20 axles, it's a two-piece, and they're commonly known to strip at the splines when you're out wheeling. So this is a much better upgrade that you can go with if you've had that issue. Another problem you might have encountered is trying to remove that hub in order to service your seals or your bearings. That's how this Jeep ended up here. And so what we're going to do is we decided it's much easier and it might even be cost effective due to labor time to go ahead and do the conversion. However, during the conversion, there's some things that you might want to know that are helpful if you're trying to do this yourself. One of those we want to notate is the inner seal here. There's going to be a two seals involved in this once it's all done. You'll have an outer and an inner. This inner seal wants to try to catch right here on this first lip that you can see. There's, I think, 3 different levels as you're going in from the machining process on this outer shaft point. And so the seal, like I said, is going to want to catch on this first one. So make sure you've got some RTV silicone already on the perimeter of that. Get you a nice adapter of some sort laying around the house or the shop that'll get as close as possible to the edge of the seal. So as you're driving that in, you're not pushing or deforming the actual internal piece of the seal. So you want to get that all the way into that third level, and you can see it's pretty obvious from the stopping point that it hits. Make sure you've got that. You can probably even measure all the way around to make sure it's evenly in there. Because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take a spacer. Now this is a bearing spacer. A lot of these kits are going to come with for you. You're going to want to lubricate it if you can to get it to where it'll slide in there. It's a very tight fit. So you're going to want to kind of work it in there. And then you're going to take your bearing itself. Now you'll see there's a dark line here that's got a 2-piece point. In the kit when we unpackaged this was pretty tight, but they do come apart. So if you need to get you a fine flathead in there to break these apart, you're going to want to get this outer race off of that. Now what we're going to focus on is getting this inner race into the actual outer portion of this housing and get it to the outside of that spacer in there. So once it pushes up against the spacer, now what you want to do is you're going to take your bearing that we pulled out of it and you're going to want to set that in there. Push it nice and tight. And what you're going to need to do at this point is check the tolerance, okay? In the spec, it shows 0.02 to 0.06 of an inch is, acceptable tolerance. However, do know that if you get this too tight or too loose, your bearing is going to prematurely wear. So what you want to do as you're installing this, we've already done the other side and we found a good tolerance point from where we pressed that bearing onto the shaft was exactly at 0.03. So what we'll do is you take this, you get you a feeler gauge, find your 0.03, for us at least, and you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that that's all the way around. If your bearing is not seating at within tolerance, let's say it's over the 0.06 range, which they do come, this internal spacer does come with the width that is going to keep you from reaching that. From our experience, at least on this vehicle, we had to shave it down significantly just to even get under 0.06. Initially on the other side, we started with 0.06, or actually 0.059. As we went to assemble the shaft and put everything together, the backing plate, the outer seal, everything comes together. We found that rotating that hub was extremely tight. And what that's going to end up doing is overheating the bearing in time, or I don't say much time, very quickly destroying this bearing. And you're back in here doing it all over again. So this is very vital that we get this tolerance right on point. So if it's not on point, go ahead and remove everything. Remember to lubricate these. And then you're going to want to get these back out. And all you'll need to do is just shave. If you get a bench grinder, you can shave this down on the side of the disc, perhaps at an even point, and then set it down in a vise. And then you're going to end up shaving it evenly with the wide file to make sure that you've got a nice even surface. So I'll show you real quick what that looks like to make sure that you're on track with it, and then we'll come right back. Once you know that you file that down, you can take actually a mic and you can run and measure at all points with the micrometer to make sure that you do have a nice even level surface all the way around. You do not want that bearing race to be offset in here. So again, everything about this install is within precision measurement. So let's go ahead and get this back in. It's not the easiest, but you can rotate it, make sure you've got some lubrication on there, get it seated against that seal, run your bearing race in there, same process. And then what you're going to do is set that bearing back in there and verify your tolerance. You're going to want to make sure, like I said, you might have to go with a different depth depending on your install and how far onto the shaft you press that bearing. But from us, like I said, where we're stopping, we found that 0.03 is a good start point. So that way we have good, proper rotational torsion. So anyways, here we are. We know that we're here, so we're going to go ahead and head to the press. We're going to assemble all the items onto the shaft. There is a specific order, and we'll get those put on the shaft in order and come back and we'll go ahead and bolt it in and see how our rotational torque feels. Back over at the press, we've got everything assembled and ready to go. You're going to want to find an adapter that's going to be able to fit right over this retainer, and then a long piece of pipe that'll go down there and meet up with that retainer. If you put these two together, you get double the trouble and makes for a much easier job. Once you get the 4 backing bolts, everything tightened down, you will be able to access those with the new flange style here. You can access the nuts with an extension and a socket right through here. Anyways, once you get those tightened up, you want to go ahead and keep checking on, as you're tightening them, the rotational torque here, making sure it's not too tight or binding up, because otherwise you'll need to go back in and shave some of that spacer down until you can get this to tighten up completely and spin with a little bit of resistance. You don't want this to be sloppy. Just use a good judgment feel of how much torque this needs to rotate. So again, if you get this too loose, then you're going to have a lot of slop in that bearing over time. It'll wear down, or too tight, you're going to overheat the bearing and wear it down pretty quick as well. So if you have any questions or comments, comment below. And as always, please like the video and subscribe.